The message came in on a quiet Tuesday morning. It was the kind of morning where the world seemed calm, almost too calm. The sun rose slowly over the horizon, casting soft light through the windows of NASA's Mission Control Center. Inside, rows of monitors displayed data streams, satellite feeds, and communication logs. Most days, the room buzzed with activity scientists talking, engineers typing, and technicians adjusting equipment. But today, an eerie silence filled the air. Everyone was waiting. When the transmission arrived, it wasn't loud or dramatic. It didn't come with flashing lights or alarms blaring. Instead, it appeared as a blinking alert on one of the main screens. A signal from deep space. The text was short but urgent. Help us. Resources failing, morale low. Please respond. The message was sent from a colony orbiting Proxima Centauri, a distant star 4 light-years away. This colony, known as Horizon Station, had been humanity's first attempt at establishing a permanent settlement beyond Earth. At least, that's what the history books said. Now it seemed like Horizon Station was on the brink of collapse. Ryan Carter sat at his desk, staring at the screen. He was a tall man with dark hair and sharp features, the kind of person who looked like he could handle anything life threw at him. And in many ways he could. Ryan had spent years training for missions like this. He'd been part of teams that repaired satellites, explored asteroids, and even tested new spacecraft designs. But this was different. This wasn't just about fixing a machine or collecting samples. This was about saving lives. Beside him, Lavra Bennett leaned forward, her eyes scanning the message. She was shorter than Ryan, with curly brown hair tied back into a ponytail. Her hands were always busy, whether she was sketching out blueprints or tinkering with gadgets. Lavra was an engineer, one of the best in the world. If something broke, she could fix it. If something needed improving, she could make it better. Right now, though, she looked worried. "This is bad," she said softly, breaking the silence. "If they're running out of supplies, we don't have much time." Commander Lisa Hart walked into the room, her boots clicking against the tiled floor. She was a no-nonsense woman with gray streaks in her hair and a voice that demanded attention. Everyone turned to look at her as she approached the main console. "What do we know?" she asked, her tone firm but not unkind. Ryan cleared his throat. "It's Horizon Station. They're asking for help. From the sound of it, things are falling apart over there." Lisa studied the message for a moment before nodding. "We'll send a team," she said decisively. "No delays, no excuses. We can't afford to lose them." The decision was made quickly. Ryan and Lavar would lead the mission, along with 2 others, Daniel Brooks, a medic with years of experience treating injuries in remote locations, and Maria Lopez, a communications expert who could keep the lines open between Earth and the colony. Together they formed a small but capable crew. Each member brought something unique to the table, and each knew the risks involved. As the hours passed, preparations began. Supplies were loaded onto the ship, equipment was checked and double-checked, and last-minute briefings were held. Ryan felt a strange mix of emotions. On one hand, he was excited. This was the kind of mission astronauts dreamed about, a chance to push boundaries and make a real difference. On the other hand, he couldn't shake the feeling of uncertainty. What exactly were they walking into? Would they be able to help? Or would they arrive too late? Lavra seemed focused, her mind already racing ahead to potential solutions. She carried a tablet everywhere she went, jotting down notes and ideas. "We'll need to prioritize," she told Ryan during a break. "Fix the essentials first: air, water, food. Then we can work on morale?" Daniel nodded in agreement. He was a quiet man with kind eyes and a steady presence. People trusted him instinctively, which was why he was such a good medic. "Morale might be the hardest part," he admitted. "You can fix machines, but people, that's different." Maria chimed in, her voice cheerful despite the gravity of the situation. "Don't worry, I'll keep everyone connected. Communication is key." By the time the launch window arrived, the crew was ready. The Odyssey, their spacecraft, gleamed under the floodlights as technicians performed final checks. Ryan stood near the entrance ramp, taking a deep breath. Behind him, Lavra adjusted her gear while Daniel and Maria exchanged a few last words. For a brief moment, everything felt still, the calm before the storm. Then, with a roar that shook the ground, the engines ignited. Flames erupted from the base of the ship, propelling it upward. Ryan gripped the armrests of his seat as the force pressed him back. Outside the window, the Earth grew smaller and smaller until it was nothing more than a blue dot against the blackness of space. Once they were safely in orbit, the mood shifted. The initial adrenaline rush gave way to the reality of the journey ahead. 4 light years was a vast distance, even for a state-of-the-art spacecraft like the Odyssey. It would take months to reach Horizon Station, and there was no guarantee of success. Still, the crew remained determined. They had trained for this. They had prepared for this. And now they were committed. As the days turned into weeks, life aboard the Odyssey settled into a routine. Ryan took charge of navigation, ensuring they stayed on course. Lavra spent most of her time reviewing the colony's schematics, trying to anticipate what repairs might be needed. Daniel kept the medical bay stocked and organized, while Maria monitored communications, sending updates back to Earth whenever possible. But space travel was never without its challenges. About 3 weeks into the voyage, a solar storm hit. Bright flashes of radiation lit up the cockpit, and warning alarms blared throughout the ship. "Everyone strap in," Ryan shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. The crew scrambled to secure themselves as the ship rocked violently. Lavra worked furiously to reroute power, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "We're losing." "Systems," she called out, her voice tense. "Life support is compromised." Maria joined her, helping to stabilize the communications array. "I've got partial control," she reported. "But it's touch and go." Daniel hovered nearby, ready to assist if anyone got hurt. His calm demeanor helped keep the others grounded. "Just focus," he urged. "We'll get through this." For what felt like hours but was really only minutes, the crew fought to regain control of the ship. Finally, the storm subsided, leaving behind a trail of minor damage. Nothing critical, thankfully, but enough to remind them how fragile their situation was. When the dust settled, Ryan let out a long breath. "Good job, everyone," he said quietly. "That could have been worse." Despite the close call, the incident brought the crew closer together. They shared stories during mealtimes, laughed at inside jokes, and supported each other when the isolation of space became overwhelming. Lavra often talked about her younger brother, who idolized her and dreamed of becoming an astronaut someday. Daniel spoke fondly of his childhood, growing up in a small town where everyone knew each other. Maria reminisced about family gatherings and holiday traditions, her voice warm with nostalgia. Through it all, Ryan listened intently. He didn't share much about himself, preferring to let the others talk. But he found comfort in their camaraderie. These weren't just colleagues. They were friends. And that friendship would be crucial once they reached Horizon Station. Finally, after months of travel, the destination came into view. Through the cockpit window, the crew saw the faint outline of Proxima Centauri, and orbiting it, the struggling colony. Smoke drifted lazily from damaged structures, and the once bright lights of the station flickered weakly. It was a sobering sight, a reminder of why they were here. Ryan clenched his jaw, determination hardening his expression. "Let's get to work," he said firmly. The Odyssey approached Horizon Station cautiously. The closer they got, the more obvious the damage became. Panels on the station's exterior were cracked or missing entirely, exposing wires and metal beams that looked like they had been battered by years of neglect. Smoke trailed lazily from vents, and some sections of the station appeared completely dark, as if power had been cut off entirely. It was a far cry from the sleek, futuristic colony Ryan and his crew had seen in training videos. This wasn't just a struggling outpost, it was a place on the verge of collapse. As the ship docked, the crew prepared to disembark. Lavra double-checked her toolkit, making sure every screwdriver, wrench, and diagnostic device was accounted for. Daniel adjusted the straps on his medical bag, ensuring everything inside was secure. Maria tested her communication headset one last time, confirming the connection between the Odyssey and Earth was stable. Ryan stood at the airlock, his hand hovering over the release lever. He took a deep breath before turning to the others. "Ready?" he asked. They nodded, their faces tense but determined. The moment the airlock opened, the reality of the situation hit them like a wall. The air smelled stale, tinged with the faint metallic scent of machinery and something else. Something unpleasant. A group of colonists waited for them, their faces gaunt and weary. Some wore patched-up jumpsuits, while others were wrapped in blankets to ward off the cold. Their eyes darted between the newcomers, searching for hope. A man stepped forward, introducing himself as Paul Jenkins. He was tall and thin, with sunken cheeks and unkempt hair. His voice was hoarse when he spoke. "You're here," he said, almost as if he couldn't believe it. "We didn't think anyone would come." Ryan shook his hand firmly. "We came as fast as we could," he replied. "Tell us what's going on?" Paul led them deeper into the station, explaining the situation as they walked. Food supplies were dangerously low, with rations reduced to barely enough to keep people alive. The water purification system had failed months ago, forcing them to rely on melted ice from nearby deposits, a process that was slow and inefficient. Life support systems were failing one by one, leaving parts of the station uninhabitable. And morale? Morale was at rock bottom. Fights broke out over scraps of food, and arguments erupted daily about how resources should be distributed. Lavra listened intently, her mind already racing through possible solutions. She stopped suddenly, pointing to a panel on the wall. "What's this?" she asked. Paul glanced at it. "That's part of the oxygen generator. It's been acting up for weeks." Without hesitation, Lavra knelt down and opened the panel. Inside, she found a tangled mess of wires and circuits. Some components were charred, evidence of an electrical surge. She pulled out her diagnostic tool and began scanning the system. "I can fix this," she said confidently, "but I'll need help." Maria immediately volunteered, joining Lavra on the floor. Together they worked quickly, rerouting power and replacing damaged parts. Within an hour, the hum of the oxygen generator returned, filling the station with fresh air. The colonists cheered softly, relief washing over their faces. It was a small victory, but it gave them hope. Meanwhile, Ryan and Daniel explored the rest of the station, assessing the damage. What they found was worse than they had imagined. Entire sections were abandoned, their doors sealed shut to conserve energy. In the medical bay, shelves were nearly empty, and the few remaining supplies were outdated or expired. Daniel frowned, shaking his head. "This is bad," he muttered. "If someone gets sick, we won't have much to work with." Ryan placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We'll make do," he said. "One step at a time." Back in the main hall, tensions ran high. A group of colonists argued loudly, their voices echoing off the walls. One woman shouted about unfair rationing, while another accused someone of hoarding supplies. Ryan stepped in, raising his hands to calm them down. "Listen to me," he called out, his voice firm but not unkind. "Fighting isn't going to help anyone. We're here to fix this together." His words seemed to have an effect. The shouting died down, and the colonists turned to face him. Ryan continued, addressing the crowd. "We know things are tough, but giving up isn't an option. You've built something incredible here, and we're going to help you keep it alive." His speech was simple, but it carried weight. Slowly, the mood shifted. People began nodding, some even offering weak smiles. Daniel noticed a young girl standing near the edge of the group. She clutched a stuffed animal tightly, her wide eyes watching him curiously. He crouched down to her level, holding out a hand. "Hi there," he said gently. "I'm Daniel. What's your name?" "Sophie," she whispered, hesitating before taking his hand. "Well, Sophie, I'm here to help." "Do you think you could show me around? Maybe introduce me to some of your friends?" Sophie nodded shyly, and Daniel smiled. Winning over the children might be the key to boosting morale. Over the next few days, the crew threw themselves into their work. Lavra and Maria focused on repairing critical systems, starting with the life support units. They worked tirelessly, often skipping meals to stay on task. Daniel set up a makeshift clinic in the medical bay, treating minor injuries and illnesses as best he could. He also organized workshops, teaching the colonists basic first aid techniques so they could take care of each other. Ryan coordinated with Pole to organize the settlers into teams. Each team was assigned specific tasks. Some helped with repairs, others gathered supplies, and a few assisted Daniel in the clinic. At first, progress was slow. Old grudges and mistrust lingered, making cooperation difficult. But as the days passed, the crew's presence began to inspire change. People started working together, sharing tools and knowledge. Small victories, like fixing a broken heater or restoring power to a darkened hallway, brought moments of joy. Despite these efforts, challenges remained. The colony's food supply was dwindling faster than expected, and tempers flared when rations were handed out. Lavra suggested implementing a rotation system where everyone took turns receiving slightly larger portions. It wasn't perfect, but it helped ease some of the tension. One evening, as the crew gathered for dinner, Maria brought up a troubling issue. "The water situation is getting worse," she said, frowning. "The ice melting process is too slow, and the filters are clogged. If we don't find a better solution soon, we're going to run out." Lavra chewed her lip thoughtfully. "There's an ice deposit about 2 kilometers from here," she said. "If we can drill into it, we might be able to extract clean water directly." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "How risky is that?" "It's not without danger," Lavra admitted. "The terrain is unstable, and the equipment isn't designed for this kind of operation. But it's our best shot." After a brief discussion, the crew decided to move forward with the plan. They spent the next day preparing, gathering tools, and mapping out the route. Early the following morning, Lavra, Ryan, and a small team of colonists set out for the ice deposit. The journey was grueling, the uneven ground testing their endurance. By the time they reached the site, fatigue was written across everyone's faces. Lavra wasted no time setting up the drilling equipment. She explained the process to the colonists, showing them how to operate the machinery safely. As the drill bit into the ice, a sense of anticipation filled the air. For the first time in weeks, there was genuine excitement. If this worked, it could save the colony. Hours passed, and the drill finally broke through. Clear, clean water bubbled to the surface, pooling in the makeshift reservoir they had prepared. Cheers erupted, the sound carrying across the barren landscape. Lavra grinned, wiping sweat from her forehead. "We did it," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. The success of the drilling operation marked a turning point for Horizon Station. With a steady supply of water secured, the colony began to stabilize. Crops started growing again, and the once dim corridors of the station brightened as lights flickered back to life. The colonists, buoyed by the crew's determination, rallied. Together, working harder than ever to rebuild their home. As the days turned into weeks, the bond between the crew and the colonists grew stronger. Sophie, the young girl who had captured Daniel's attention, now followed him everywhere, eager to learn. Paul, once weighed down by despair, took charge of organizing the settlers, his leadership skills shining through. Even Maria, who had initially struggled to connect with the colonists, found herself laughing alongside them during meal times. The mission wasn't over yet, but for the first time since arriving, the crew allowed themselves to feel a glimmer of hope. They had faced countless obstacles, from technical failures to human conflict, but they had persevered. Together they had shown that even in the darkest moments, humanity could rise to the challenge, and as Ryan stood on the observation deck, gazing out at the stars, he felt a quiet pride. This mission wasn't just about saving a colony, it was about proving that no matter how far humanity ventured into the unknown, its spirit remained unstoppable. The mood at Horizon Station had shifted. After weeks of despair, the colonists were beginning to see a glimmer of hope. The arrival of fresh water from the ice deposit had been a turning point. Crops that had withered under the harsh conditions began to sprout again, and the once empty storage bins started filling up with supplies. People smiled more often, and the tension in the air seemed to ease. But despite these improvements, challenges remained. The crew knew they couldn't let their guard down, not yet. Lavra spent most of her time working on the station's systems. She had become a familiar figure, moving from one section to another with her toolkit slung over her shoulder. Her hands were always busy, fixing broken panels, rewiring circuits, or diagnosing problems. She worked quickly but carefully, knowing that every repair brought the colony one step closer to stability. The colonists admired her determination and often stopped to thank her. "You're amazing," one man said after she fixed a malfunctioning heating unit. Lavra just shrugged, brushing a strand of hair out of her face. "It's what I'm here for," she replied simply. Maria stayed close to the communication center, ensuring the link between Horizon Station and Earth remained strong. Every day she sent updates to Mission Control, detailing the progress they had made and the challenges they still faced. Sometimes she received messages from Earth, encouraging words from friends and family, news about the world they had left behind, or technical advice from engineers who supported their efforts. Maria shared these messages with the crew and the colonists, using them as a reminder that they weren't alone. "We've got an entire planet cheering us on," she told Sophie one afternoon, handing her a printed note from a school class back home. Sophie read it eagerly, her eyes lighting up. Daniel continued to focus on the health of the colonists. He treated injuries, distributed medicine, and taught basic first aid skills to anyone willing to learn. His calm demeanor and gentle voice made him a trusted figure among the settlers. Children like Sophie flocked to him, eager to show off bandages he had applied or ask questions about his work. One evening, as he sat in the clinic organizing supplies, Paul approached him. "You've done so much for us," Paul said, his voice filled with gratitude. "How can we ever repay you?" Daniel shook his head. "You don't need to repay me. Just take care of each other. That's all the thanks I need." Ryan, meanwhile, took charge of coordinating the overall effort. He met regularly with Paul and other leaders to discuss priorities and assign tasks. He encouraged the colonists to share ideas and offer solutions, fostering a sense of ownership over the recovery process. Slowly, the community began to rebuild, not just physically but emotionally as well. People started helping each other without being asked, sharing resources, and finding joy in small victories. Ryan noticed this shift and felt a deep sense of satisfaction. They were proving that even in the toughest situations, humanity could come together, but not everything went smoothly. Tensions occasionally flared, especially when resources were scarce. One morning, a heated argument broke out over food rations. Two men shouted at each other, their faces red with anger. Others gathered around, some siding with one man, others with the other. The commotion drew Ryan's attention, and he hurried to intervene. Raising his hands, he stepped between the two men. "Enough!" he said firmly. "Fighting isn't going to solve anything. We're all in this together." His words cut through the chaos, and the crowd fell silent. Ryan turned to the rest of the group. "I know things are hard. I know it feels unfair sometimes. But blaming each other won't help. What will help is working together. Let's focus on what we can do, not what we can't." His speech calmed the crowd, and the argument ended as quickly as it had begun. Later that day, Ryan pulled Paul aside. "We need to address the rationing issue," he said. "It's causing too much friction." Paul nodded. "I agree, but how? There's only so much to go around." Ryan thought for a moment. "What? If we rotate the distribution? Everyone gets slightly larger portions on different days. It might not fix everything, but it could reduce resentment." Paul considered the idea and eventually agreed to try it. The new system wasn't perfect, but it helped ease some of the tension. Over time, people adapted and arguments became less frequent. As the weeks passed, the crew tackled bigger projects. One of the most pressing issues was the station's failing power grid. Without reliable electricity, many systems, including life support and communications, were at risk of shutting down completely. Lavra and Maria worked tirelessly to identify the problem. They discovered that several key components had worn out beyond repair. Replacing them would require scavenging parts from abandoned sections of the station or improvising with what they had. "I think I can rig something up," Lavra said one evening, sketching a design on her tablet. "But it'll be tricky." Maria studied the diagram. Do you need help? Always, Lavara replied with a grin. Together, they devised a plan and recruited a team of colonists to assist. The project took days to complete, but when the lights finally came back on in the darkened corridors, cheers erupted throughout the station. For the first time in months, every corner of Horizon Station was illuminated. Despite these successes, there was still one major challenge looming: morale. While physical needs were slowly being met, the emotional toll of living in such difficult conditions weighed heavily on the colonists. Some struggled with feelings of isolation, while others battled guilt over past mistakes or fears about the future. Daniel recognized this and decided to take action. He organized group sessions where people could talk openly about their struggles. At first, attendance was low, and those who came were hesitant to speak. But Daniel's patience paid off. Gradually, people opened up, sharing stories of loss, hope, and resilience. These sessions became a lifeline for many, offering a safe space to express emotions and connect with others. Sophie attended nearly every session, sitting quietly at first but eventually joining in. One day, she stood up and spoke about her parents, who had died shortly after arriving at the colony. Her voice trembled, but she didn't cry. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. Daniel hugged her tightly, proud of her courage. From that day on, Sophie seemed brighter, more confident. She even started helping Daniel organize the sessions, encouraging others to participate. As the weeks turned into months, the transformation at Horizon Station was undeniable. The once dismal outpost was coming back to life. Gardens flourished, machinery hummed steadily, and laughter echoed through the halls. The colonists, inspired by the crew's unwavering dedication, worked harder than ever to ensure their survival. Even Paul, who had initially seemed defeated, found renewed purpose. He led meetings, resolved disputes, and motivated others with speeches that reminded them of their shared goal. One evening, as the sun set over the distant horizon, Ryan gathered the crew for a rare moment of rest. They sat together in the observation deck, sipping coffee and gazing out at the stars. Lavra leaned back in her chair, stretching her sore muscles. "We've come a long way," she said softly. "We have," Ryan agreed. "But we're not done yet," Maria smiled. "No, but look how far they've come. They're stronger now mentally and physically. They can handle whatever comes next." Daniel nodded. "And we'll be here to guide them." For a moment, no one spoke. They simply enjoyed the quiet, reflecting on everything they had accomplished. Then Lavra broke the silence. "Do you think they'll make it?" "Once we leave, I mean—" Ryan looked at her, his expression thoughtful. "They'll have to, and they will. We've given them the tools they need, not just machines and supplies, but hope and unity. That's what will keep them going." The others nodded in agreement. They knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but they also knew the colonists were capable of overcoming it. With the foundation they had built, Horizon Station had a fighting chance. As the night wore on, the crew returned to their duties, ready to tackle whatever challenges remained. They understood that their mission wasn't just about saving a colony, it was about proving that humanity could endure, adapt, and thrive even in the harshest environments. And as they looked around at the smiling faces of the colonists, they realized they had already succeeded in ways they never imagined. The crew of the Odyssey had grown accustomed to the rhythms of life at Horizon Station. Days began with early morning checks on systems and supplies, followed by hours of hard work repairing equipment, tending to crops, or teaching the colonists new skills. Evenings were quieter, often spent sharing meals or reflecting on the day's progress. But despite the routine, there was always an undercurrent of urgency. The crew knew their time here was limited, and every moment counted. Lavra had become a fixture in the station's engineering bay. Her workspace was cluttered with tools, spare parts, and diagrams scrawled on scraps of paper. She worked tirelessly, her hands moving with precision as she tackled one problem after another. Recently, she had turned her attention to the station's communication array. While Maria had managed to stabilize the link with Earth, the system was still unreliable. Lavra suspected it was due to damage caused by years of exposure to space debris and radiation. This isn't going to hold forever, Lavra muttered to herself as she examined the array's components. We need to reinforce it. Maria joined her, peering over her shoulder. What do you think? Can we fix it? I think so, Lavar replied, pointing to a section of the array. But we'll need to replace this panel. It's too worn out to patch up, Maria nodded. Okay, let's get to work. Together, they dismantled the damaged section, carefully removing each piece. The process was slow and painstaking, but Lavra didn't mind. She found comfort in the rhythm of her work, the way problems could be solved one step at a time. As they installed the replacement panel, Maria asked, Do you ever wonder what will happen when we leave? Lavra paused, her hands resting on the edge of the array. Sometimes, she admitted. But I try not to think about it too much. We've done everything we can to prepare them. They'll manage, Maria smiled faintly. You're right, they're stronger now. Still, it's hard to imagine not. Being here, it's hard for all of us, Lavara said quietly. But that's why we have to make these last few weeks count. Elsewhere in the station, Daniel continued his efforts to support the colonists' health and well-being. His clinic had become a hub of activity, not just for treating injuries but also for fostering connections. Colonists stopped by to chat, share concerns, or simply sit quietly while he organized supplies. Sophie visited almost daily, bringing drawings she had made or stories she wanted to tell. Daniel listened patiently, encouraging her creativity and offering advice when needed. One afternoon, Paul approached Daniel with a request. We're planning a memorial service for those we've lost, he explained. Would you be willing to say a few words? Daniel hesitated. Public speaking wasn't his strong suit, but he understood the importance of honoring the fallen. Of course, he said finally. I'd be honored. The service was held in the station's main hall, a large open space where colonists gathered for meetings and celebrations. Chairs were arranged in rows, and a makeshift podium stood at the front. Photos of the deceased were displayed on a nearby table, surrounded by flowers grown in the station's gardens. The room was filled with quiet murmurs as people took their seats. When it was Daniel's turn to speak, he stepped up to the podium, his heart pounding. He scanned the crowd, meeting the eyes of those who looked to him for comfort. Today, we remember the people who gave everything to make this colony possible, he began, his voice steady. They faced challenges none of us can imagine, and they never gave up. Their courage inspires us to keep going, even when things seem impossible. He paused, taking a deep breath. We honor them not just by remembering their sacrifices, but by continuing their work, by building a future they would be proud of. That's how we carry their legacy forward. The room fell silent as Daniel finished speaking. Tears glistened in many eyes, but there was also a sense of resolve. The memorial wasn't just a time to mourn, it was a reminder of why they were fighting so hard to survive. Ryan, meanwhile, focused on preparing the colonists for the long-term challenges ahead. He organized training sessions, teaching them how to maintain critical systems and troubleshoot common problems. He also encouraged them to take ownership of their roles within the community, emphasizing the importance of teamwork. No one person can do everything, he told them during one session. But together you can accomplish anything. Paul stood beside him, nodding in agreement. Ryan's right. Each of you has a part to play. Whether it's growing food, fixing machines, or keeping morale high, your contributions matter. Don't forget that. The colonists responded positively to these efforts, embracing their responsibilities with renewed determination. They formed committees to oversee different aspects of the station's operations, from agriculture to maintenance. Slowly but surely, the colony began to function more smoothly, less reliant on the crew's constant guidance. Still, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. Despite all the progress, there was an underlying tension, a sense that the colonists were holding back, afraid to fully trust themselves or each other. He decided to address this directly during a community meeting. We've come a long way. Ryan began, standing at the front of the room. But I want to talk about something important. Fear. Fear of failure, fear of disappointment, fear of the unknown. These feelings are natural, especially in a place like this. But they can also hold us back? He paused, letting his words sink in. I'm not saying you shouldn't feel afraid. What I'm saying is, don't let fear stop you from trying. Every mistake is a chance to learn. Every setback is an opportunity to grow. You've already proven you can overcome incredible odds. Believe in yourselves. Believe in each other. His speech resonated deeply with the colonists. For some, it was exactly what they needed to hear. Over the following days, people seemed more confident, more willing to take risks and tackle challenges head-on. Even small acts of bravery like volunteering for a difficult task or offering help without being asked became more common. As the weeks passed, the crew prepared for their eventual departure. Supplies were packed, equipment was checked, and final repairs were completed. Lavra spent hours reviewing the station's systems, ensuring everything was functioning as it should. Maria tested the communication array one last time, confirming the link with Earth was stable. Daniel stocked the medical bay with extra supplies, leaving detailed instructions for the colonists. And Ryan held a series of meetings with Paul and other leaders, discussing contingency plans and offering advice. On their final evening at Horizon Station, the crew gathered with the colonists for a farewell dinner. The meal was simple but heartfelt, featuring vegetables grown in the station's gardens and bread baked by the settlers. Laughter and conversation filled the air, along with occasional tears. When the meal ended, Paul stood to address the group. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "When we sent that message, we weren't sure anyone would answer, but you came, you gave us hope when we had none. You showed us that we're not alone. We'll never forget what you've done for us." Ryan stepped forward, shaking Paul's hand firmly. "It was our privilege to help," he said. "But remember, this is your home now. You built it, you saved it, and you'll keep it alive." The others echoed his sentiments, offering words of encouragement and gratitude. Sophie hugged Daniel tightly, promising to visit Earth someday. "I'm going to be a doctor like you," she whispered, her voice filled with determination. By the time the crew boarded the Odyssey the next morning, the mood was bittersweet. They were proud of everything they had accomplished, but saddened to leave behind the people who had become like family. As the ship detached from the station and began its journey home, Ryan stood at the cockpit window, watching Horizon Station grow smaller and smaller. "We did good," Lavra said softly, standing beside him. "We did," Ryan agreed. "And they'll do even better." The journey back to Earth was quieter than the trip to Proxima Centauri. The crew spent their days reflecting on their experiences, sharing memories, and dreaming about the future. They knew their mission wouldn't be forgotten. It had shown humanity's resilience and capacity for compassion. Most importantly, it had reminded them that no matter how far apart people might be, they were connected by a shared spirit of hope and determination. As the Odyssey entered Earth's atmosphere, the crew braced themselves for the welcome awaiting them. Reporters, scientists, and officials would want to hear their story, and the world would celebrate their success. But for now, they allowed themselves a moment of peace, knowing they had truly made a difference, and somewhere, orbiting a distant star, the colonists of Horizon Station carried on, inspired by the unstoppable spirit of those who had come to help and stayed long enough to change their lives forever. The Odyssey's return to Earth was met with overwhelming excitement. News of their mission had spread across the globe, and millions of people tuned in to watch the crew's homecoming. Reporters gathered at the landing site, cameras flashing. As the spacecraft touched down, when Ryan, Lavara, Daniel, and Maria stepped out onto the platform, they were greeted by thunderous applause. The crowd chanted their names, holding up signs that read "Heroes" and "Unstoppable." For a moment, the crew stood still, taking it all in. Ryan raised his hand to quiet the crowd. "We're not heroes," he said, his voice calm but firm. "We just did our jobs. The real heroes are the colonists at Horizon Station. They've shown incredible strength and resilience. This is their victory as much as ours." His words resonated deeply, earning even louder cheers. People wanted to hear more about the mission, the challenges, the triumphs, and the lessons learned. Over the following days, the crew gave interviews, attended press conferences, and spoke at events. They shared stories of their time at Horizon Station, highlighting the courage and determination of the settlers. They also emphasized the importance of teamwork, innovation, and hope. Lavra became a favorite among audiences. Her explanations of technical repairs were simple yet fascinating, making complex concepts accessible to everyone. She often joked about how messy her workspace had been, eliciting laughter from the crowd. It wasn't glamorous, she admitted during one interview, but sometimes the hardest work is the most rewarding. Maria captured attention with her tales of keeping communication lines open. She described the late nights spent troubleshooting signals and the joy of hearing voices from Earth after long periods of silence. Communication is more than just talking, she explained. It's about connection. It reminds us we're never truly alone, no matter where we are. Daniel's stories touched hearts. He spoke about the colonists' struggles and how they overcame fear and despair. His descriptions of Sophie's bravery brought tears to many eyes. She taught me something important, he said. Hope isn't something you wait for, it's something you create. As the days turned into weeks, the crew settled back into life on Earth, but they couldn't forget Horizon Station or the people they had left behind. They stayed in touch through regular video calls, checking on the colony's progress and offering advice when needed. The colonists, in turn, sent updates and messages of gratitude. Paul frequently appeared on screen, proudly showing off improvements to the station. You'd be amazed at what we've done, he said during one call. Keep reading.